Our presentation is called Make a Mountain Out of a Molehill, and it's more about service work and getting involved through service work and bringing your service work home with you rather than going on a trip or volunteering in your community, leaving it all there, and then kind of coming back and not making many changes. So I'm Jillian. I just graduated in December. I'm a PT major.
I'm Skylar. I'm a senior occupational therapy major.
I'm Andrew. I'm a senior entrepreneurship major.
I'm Eric. I'm a psychology major and I'm a sophomore.
Okay, so what we kind of wanted to tell you guys what we want you to get out of this presentation. We don't want to stand up here and preach at you like how to be a leader, because you guys are all very productive leaders, I'm sure, and that's why you're here. But we just kind of want to tell you what we got out of our service trip and what we're continuing to do to bring our service work home and what we learned from it, rather than just kind of leaving it all there. So the first thing I want to do is ask some questions. So who here has participated in some form of a service trip or experience? Or will be participating in some form of service trip and experience? Okay. And what about that experience empowered you to initiate a change? So Bianca, I think you're the only one that went on one already. You said? In general.
Yeah.
Well, like I went to China for like kind of working with students in schools, and so I don't know. When I came back to my school, we kind of initiated like a sister school partnership, and then we kind of like from there back kind of like worked on, I don't know, like forming education there and like kind of using what they use there over like in the United States, and we also gave them items that they didn't have, and like simple items like crayons and things like that, because we don't really have much of
Okay, awesome. So you kind of just answered our third question too. So what's an action that you think would be appropriate to take upon returning home, even though you may not have gone on a service trip so far?
So I know like friends who went on the Dominican Republic trip this past winter break, they have like their fundraiser tonight, where it's like a silent auction where they're raising money and like everything, all their proceeds either go towards more trips or like sending supplies back to like the schools that they support and the children they support down in the Dominican Republic. So at least I feel like something like that is like a good example.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, so that's kind of what we're trying to tie in here, is that we didn't just go to Africa for 2 weeks and then come back and do nothing. We've only been back for a month. We've already met probably 4 or 5 times. We're already talking about different things that we can do to change it, and we're already standing up here talking to all of you guys about our trip and what we got out of it and all of that. So we just wanted to kind of say that it's really important to not just end your service work with your trip.
So pre-departure, it was an alternative winter break trip. So we took time out of our own holiday as such to go on this trip. We spent 5 days at a holiday camp at Vaiki Primary School where the children were aged between 3rd and 7th grade. It's a very deprived community, and they don't have much. There were 12 leaders from Quinnipiac that went. We were split into groups of 2, and so there were 6 teams, and we were connected with an age group at Vaiki. And we got the kids involved in soccer and hip hop in the morning before it got too warm in the afternoon. And in the afternoon we did dance, arts, crafts, team building and education exercises. So before we left, there was a lot of things that had to be put into place so the trip would flow and it would be successful. For some it was another stamp in the passport, and for others it was the first time leaving the country. So they were in for a huge shock. For this trip, we were guinea pigs. The holiday camp had never been run before, so we were the first students to be taking part in this and leading it and organizing it. There was fundraising pressures because we had set goals of what we wanted to achieve and take down so we could offer the kids something other than just ourselves when we were there. And Tuesday nights at 9 was when we discussed fundraising. We made new friends like us 4 here. Peter educated us on all the different history and cultural things that we were about to embark on. And the main thing from those meetings was, were we ready? Peter tried as hard as possible to prepare us, but mentally and emotionally we felt we were ready, but nothing could prepare us for what we were about to embark on.
So like Eric was saying, like South Africa is very rich in history and it's very diverse, and it just broke the apartheid rules in 1990, Peter was just saying, which means like they're very new to equality, they're very new to freedom, so the racial barriers are still there. So Cape Town, the center of Cape Town is primarily rich, and then the outskirts is extreme poverty, and that's where we were working in the school. So the program that we were working with is Tippy Toes. The leader of Tippy Toes is a woman named Tamron Simpson, and she's a saint. I mean, she's just like, her name is synonymous with Tippy Toes. It's a very small organization. It's a nonprofit. That's Tamron right there in the picture. She has a full-time job at a PR agency.
And that's me dancing really well.
Yeah. And she does these projects on the side. So like she took a week off of work for us to come down and run this camp with us. She goes and helps them on weekends. She sees them throughout the week. And their motto is people helping people. So her across in the townships and in the school. So she sees a problem with like inequality, and that's what she's acting towards. And she's acting towards empowering the people. She's not trying to tell them what they need to do to change. She's trying to give them the tools to feel self-empowered and give them motivation and feel good about themselves to bring the change upon them. So for example, while we were in the school, we taught the kids of the power of education and what respect means. And in the townships, she started this quilting project to try and get the women to feel like they have skills, they can make their own living. And that's the type of work that she does. And like Eric was saying too, prior to the trip, there was all these, apprehensions and expectations because we were the new kids, and how would the kids receive us? We Skyped with Tamron, and we talked about, what do these kids think of us as Americans, white Americans, coming into this region in South Africa where the inequality is so massive. How are they going to accept us? And we had to be leaders at the camp while still dealing with this culture shock. So, seeing our cell phones for the first time was like huge for them. They're speaking in Afrikaans. We're trying to get them to speak in English so that we can communicate with them. So there's all these things that you have to think about when you're entering a situation.
Okay, so obviously a huge part of being a leader and going on a service trip in general is trust. There was a lot of aspects that went into trust. So the main thing for us in the beginning when we were having all of our meetings, when we were talking with one another, was that we had to kind of trust one another, and we had to trust Tamron, trust Peter, and they had to trust us, as well as the other volunteers at the camp. Which is a huge thing when you think about it, because Tamron knows these kids, she knows these communities, and she goes up to one of these communities, she's got a million little kids running and giving her hugs, like, they know who she is, they know what she's about, but she didn't know who we were. So her trusting us to come down and work with her kids and have them divulge everything that they divulged to us was just huge. And being able to take that step and jump up into that kind of position is just amazing, and I'm so proud of the 12 of us for being able to do that. Another huge thing was that you have to consider these kids' backgrounds, where they're coming from, what kind of environments they're raised in, what their family life is like, and you kind of have to cater your leadership style to these kids, because you can't go in there and act like above them. You can't go in there and act like your world and your technologies and everything like that is better. You have to make normal. You can't think of your life as normal and their lives as inferior to yours. So some kids needed more attention. Some kids needed to just play all day and just to be an outlet from home and an outlet from their real life. And some kids needed you to pull them aside and talk to them one-on-one about what's going on at home and how you can help them and how you can help them help themselves. And then lastly, just the mutual trust amongst supervisors. If one kid tells you something that you need to say, that you need to tell someone, you need to be able to tell your fellow leaders, your fellow, like Tamron, your fellow supervisors what's going on, and know when to break that line and when not to.
So for personal leadership styles, each of us brought something new to the table. As a group, we collaborated, we worked really well together, we're compassionate, we were so dedicated to this trip and to these children and to helping Tamron, and especially the Tippy Toes Foundation. But individually, we all have different qualities and different traits and different leadership styles. And those are extremely vital in maintaining such a successful learning experience for not only us, but for the children as well. We use adaptive skills and different techniques that had to be used in many situations, and like depending on how the kids were acting that day, you had to really adapt to what they needed. So if a camper was having an off day, you had to change the way that you were acting towards them to cope with them or to talk with them or pull them aside. And if they were having a rough day, you had to be the shoulder that they were leaning on, and you couldn't take it personally. But you did have to be that leader for them, that role model for them. So some questions that we want to ask you. What do you guys think makes a good leader? Like, what are some qualities or some traits?
Someone who communicates effectively.
Yep. And why are traits like these so important? Like, why is it so important to communicate?
You have to be approachable if anybody has any questions or needs to confide in someone or just needs guidance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So are there any times where it's more important to be a leader as opposed, like to be a follower than to be a leader?
If someone's already stepping up to the plate as a leader, sometimes you just have to step back and be a follower and let one person take the lead.
Exactly. Sometimes it takes a follower to be a leader. So I think that that's something that we had to do very often on this trip.
One more thing I would just is like another thing about the leadership there is like the motivational value. So, you know, finding the ways to motivate people. But I'm sure Jillian's going to talk about that.
Okay, so kind of moving into individual leadership. Throughout this trip and any kind of service work, you have to be able to maintain your individual leadership as well as maintain partner and group leadership and things like that. And those are different and need to be catered to the situations that you're in. So with individual leadership, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Nicaragua, whether you're in New Haven, whether you're with your respective organization at school, just providing support for your fellow peers and mentorship for anyone that's following you. In our case, it was kind of like the campers, just constantly being a role model, constantly doing the right things and showing them the right way to do things. I remember Andrew and I, one of the first things we did at camp was in all our pictures that we were taking, the kids would pose and they would have like guns because they like thought that was really cool, and they would hold their hands like guns, and we taught them that the way we did things was you hold a peace sign instead because that's so much cooler, and why were they doing guns? It's not cool at all. So like just know when to step up and know when to kind of alter things when it's your place to like take a leadership role and when it's your place to step back. Always being trustworthy and reliable, of course, not only for Tamara and for Peter, for your fellow peers and leaders, but also for the kids. Like make sure that they know that you're someone that they can confide in. Make sure they know that you're there to help them. You're there to be their friend, but you're also there to lead them, and then have the confidence and courage to make the right decisions. We ran into kind of like a difficult situation with that in Andrew and I's group. We were told to like not let the kids to make sure that we had the proper number of scissors after the arts and crafts because they'll try and steal them and go home with them and things like that. And these kids are like very, very little, like sweet, innocent. You just would never expect something like that. So at the end of the day, I pulled Andrew aside and I was like, we're missing a pair of scissors. Like, we have to find these scissors. So we sat our group down. We asked them if anyone had them. Obviously, no one fessed up. And that's a difficult thing to ask because you've just gotten their confidence, you've gotten their trust, and you don't want to have to break that and everything like that. So we had to approach Tamron and tell her about them because one of our girls that barely spoke, very introverted, it had been rumored that she had taken them. But anyways, it's just knowing when to cross that line and when it's appropriate to step up and be more than just a friend and be more of a leader.
So for partners in group leadership, it's important in all situations, not just for us going on this trip, that when you're working as a group or when you have a partner, that you do share those leadership qualities. It's important for you to share the same visions, the same goals and aspirations that you want to continue and provide for whatever you're working towards. So for us, it was the kids. But it was also important to recognize who you were as a leader, so that way you can collaborate accordingly. You must realize like the different traits, and so like for example, if I was giving directions, like my partner was to make sure that she took care of the kids, or if I was doing something that she could just pick up what I was putting down. So she was always there for me, and I was always there for her, just to make sure that we were working up very much together. It's also very important to realize to have confidence in yourself and to have confidence in your partner. But they are your support system. So you have to so it's very important to just, when you are working together, that like it's in complete unity. It's important to know like when to be a facilitator, when to be a leader. So back to the question that I had asked before, it doesn't just have to be when you're on a trip abroad. It could be whether you're in a classroom. You just have to know when it's your turn to step back and when it's your turn to step up.
Okay. And then the last part about this section, so we were obviously all chosen for this trip for different reasons because we're 4 extremely different people. So it's important to know whether it's within Quinnipiac, an organization there, whether it's on a service trip somewhere abroad, whether it's next door, that everyone has their different qualities. And there's no right or wrong pieces to your personality, and there's no right or wrong pieces to your character, but there's a time and place for everyone to step up and everyone to let their personality traits shine. So for example, Eric did a really good job of this on our trip, because he was probably one of the loudest, most rambunctious people. When he knew that the kids needed that boost, and he'd go around and sing and sound pretty terrible.
An idiot.
But he would also be the first one that if he saw a kid struggling, he would be like, hey, let's go talk, and like bring them aside. So it's just important that you recognize that there's a time and place for every action and every characteristic, and that your personality traits either need to be magnified or tapered depending on the situation. And this goes for anything. This doesn't just go for an abroad trip to South Africa. We're just using this as our reference point, but this goes for like SGA, SPB. It's a message that can be applied respectively.
So in relation to any service trip as such, we wanted to relate it back to the essential learning outcomes that our school has. The one that I'm about to speak about, the responsible citizenship, the ability to recognize, analyze, and influence decisions and actions at the local, national, and global community level, and to engage in the community as responsible citizens. We've decided to break it into 3 parts because we feel that there are 3 different levels that this ELO strikes upon. But firstly, being a responsible citizen, there's so much more to the world. There's so much more to the world than just like the society that you live in, and we feel that each and every individual should make an effort to step outside your local society and educate themselves on the wider world. And educating yourselves on a wider world gives you more of an insight into what you personally don't know because you haven't experienced it, and that's very important. To be a responsible citizen, there's characteristics that can be commonly used, but they're not for every responsible citizen. Like being friendly, educated, responsible, and setting an example and taking the lead. Learning to take action, big or small, global or local. Any type of action can have a reaction that can be more influential to others than you may think. So even I'm on the men's soccer team, and we went to a local school in Hamden. It's the same type of idea as what we've done. We went to South Africa, but we went to a local school in Hamden, and the reaction we got from these kids was just as inspiring as the reaction we got from the kids in South Africa. So it can be on a local or global level. And it's very important to learn about cultures and communities as we have, and do something about it. That's where leadership comes in. Example, like taking the lead, you have the experience, but do something about it afterwards instead of just sitting on it. So it's very important to inform yourself, as we have done, but it's also very important to form others, because others can have just as important or just as an influential outlook for these children as we have. We learn that for a group of people, you can pass a message on to others that that we can pass this message on to others that can also help. Like we could help in one way, but say if we pass it on to different people at this school who are taking part in different majors, they could help in a different way. So this is the first section, the ELO, the ability to recognize, analyze, and influence decisions and actions. We feel it's very important to educate yourself and your interests. Take leadership to know yourself, because if you don't know yourself, you won't know what you you're interested in, you won't know what you can help with. Understanding your passion, your desires, and recognize what needs to be done about it. For us, we took a look past our idyllic life that we lived and we looked at those who are less fortunate than us, and we outreached our gracious hand to help in any way possible. However, to help, you must analyze the layers of the concept and fully understand to know in what way you can help. So with our meetings, Peter would give us an insight into the culture, the history, and the economic structure of South Africa. So we were able to have a deeper insight into what we were going to get ourselves into. And those were three important things that for any trip you have to understand, so you're able to immerse yourself fully and not come across barriers that are going to stop you from communicating with them. Learn through existing organizations. So we went through the Tippy Toes organization to gain first-hand experience, and Tamron was able to give us an understanding of knowing what it takes to make a difference, as she has experienced for the last how many of a years she's been. I think it's 3 or 4 years that she's been running the Tippy Toes Foundation. She knows what it takes to make a difference. And the more time spent involved, the bigger the influence. But for us, it was also about the purpose of the experience that we had, especially the purpose of why we went. And it was beyond just the experience. We went to help and to be able to continue to help. So it's not just about going, it's about coming back and doing something about it.
Second part, local, national, and global community level. This is injected into our brains at Quinnipiac. I mean, the Q301 series, 101, 201, 301. I mean, the concept of understanding your role in a global community and like coming at it from a local communal and national level is very big at our school. And it's in our mission statement. I pulled it out. It's one of the attributes is respect for the multiplicity of human perspectives and belief systems. And it's really what it comes down to is experiential learning. Like Eric was talking about, it's important to get that education in the classroom, to be aware of it, but in order to fully understand it, you got to go and you got to experience it. And for a university like this where we stress this, being a responsible citizen, it surprises me kind of that we don't use more trips like these, or there's not more available. I mean, I know there is a lot available, but in order to fully drive home this message of the local, national, and global level, you got to go and you got to do it. You got to dive into the experience. It's important to travel, and get that quick glimpse of the culture, because you have so much to learn from being in the culture. And just the power of broadening your horizons is a completely new form of education. Not new, but different form of education. And I think it's very important for us as college students to get that type of education while we're in school and take advantage of these, trips, whether it's local. You don't have to, you can go, across the street, you can go across the town, you can go to another state, you can cross national boundaries. You can go 15 minutes into New Haven, you can go 16 hours to South Africa. You know what I mean? It's not the same experience, but you're going to get that experience. And then the last part is to engage back in responsible citizens. So this is kind of like where we're at now, is we've gone and we've had the experience. What do you do now when you come back home? Well, the biggest thing is sustainability, and Peter talked to us about it, the guy who led our trip. It's not that you can't, but in order to be a good leader and have those leadership skills, is finding like what you can do when you come back. You don't have to do anything crazy. You can get together and do a presentation like this to try and get your message out. You know what I mean? And have other people find their little niche and how they and inspire it in others. So the sustainability is huge. Taking leadership for post-trip action. This is like making your mountain. This is the message of our presentation, is taking your little molehill experience and making the mountain out of it. You have to be willing, not forced, so you have to have that passion within you to want to continue to do it, because you can't tell someone about the experience you had and have them try and be as excited as you are about it. You know what I mean? You got to know who's still passionate about it, and you work with those people. And the continuous thought processing with the group. You come back from an experience, whether it's local, national, or global, and you have all these thoughts running through your head. And you want to just like tell the whole world how you feel. but the only people that really know how you feel are the people in your group. So it's important to get those thoughts out with other people, reflect, and figure out where you can go from there.
All right. The second ELO and the last ELO we wanted to touch upon is the diversity, awareness, and sensitivity, which again, Quinnipiac obviously endorses and preaches to us. So it says, an understanding of and respect for the similarities and differences among human communities. This includes a recognition and appreciation for the unique talents and contributions of all individuals. So this is kind of what I was touching upon before with our sense of normal. Just because we live day to day doesn't mean that it's right, doesn't mean that it's normal or above other people, and that's something that we constantly had to keep in mind while we were down there, is we were there to help, but they helped us 20 times more than I could have ever imagined, or any of us probably could have ever imagined. And then the second part that I just wanted to touch upon was a lot of this was obviously extremely difficult to deal with for us, and we had to use various different coping mechanisms. Like when one of your campers that you've gotten so close to throughout the week comes and sits in your lap and tells you all these terrible things about their lives and what they go through, and they're crying on the day that you leave, like that's not an easy thing to emotionally cope with. So you have your support system. Like I cried, we all bawled our eyes out for hours upon hours and upon hours, and I'm not saying that that's how you have to react, that's the right way to cope with things, but we had each other for support. We had Peter, who had been there over and over and was our rock the entire time. We had Tamarin, who knew kind of what we were getting ourselves into, but was also surprised. So it's just finding different ways to cope with it that are healthy and how to respond, and that's why we're sitting up here right now, is because we feel so inspired and impacted by our trip that we want you guys to feel this way. Not if you probably already have, but we also want you to learn something out of this, and if one person takes away something, then that's what we're trying to do. The separate realities thing was obviously very difficult for us, because like everyone here has a cell phone, everyone here has a TV, and to them seeing their face on a screen was the coolest thing ever, and we had to put life into perspective, and Peter and Tamarin had to constantly remind us that we can't have that out all the time, because that's flashy to them, that's putting us on that pedestal that we didn't want to be on. That's kind of separating ourselves further than we wanted to be for that week. Even buying them drinking water, they got soda pop, or juice they called it, I think. Fizz, yeah, fizzy. At the camp as like a treat, because none of them ever get that. And we were thinking, they kept asking for water, like water. So we took our own money and bought them water every day, because it was something you don't even think about, like that they want water, like clean drinking water. So every morning we would go and we'd buy them big jugs of water, and it's just that's their reality. That's what they want. They don't want a new iPod. They want clear drinking water. So overall, it was just really difficult because it put our lives into perspective. And the message to take away from that is like, what are you going to do about seeing all of that? Like, can you go down there and fix everything right now? No. Can you make your life more simplistic because of it when you come home? Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell other people about your experience and hope that they take something from that, and hope that they maybe don't waste water next time they shower? Just think about what you're doing. And I know that personally, I think about every action I now take where I wouldn't have thought about it before. It just really puts everything into perspective for you, I guess.
So now that we're home, we thought that our journey was going to begin the second that we stepped foot in Africa. That's not the case at all. Now that we're home, the journey is just beginning. Service doesn't have to end just because we're home and just because our trip is over. We meet every week and talk about all the different things that we want to do and actually get them done. Everybody brings something different to the table. So between our majors, we all have different ideas and people take different action, but like as a unit, we're all working together to not finish what we started, but continue it. And being here, that's one of the things that we're doing. We're telling you guys, we're educating you on what we've done and how, if you guys ever want to do something, don't just stop because it's over. You can always continue it. So what we learned from all this experience is that it's not like the littlest of impact can make the greatest of change for everybody. So like Jillian said with the water, that's all they wanted was clean water, and we were giving them treats, but all they wanted was water, and that little impact changed so much for them. That made their entire week. And like we've said and reiterated many times, is that they've helped us more than we could ever imagine to help them. They have put our lives in perspective. They have changed things that we want to do or how we look at life and what we do now that we're here and how much more we can help them. It's become like who we are. We've left part of our hearts in South Africa. And we're just inspired to spread the word and just to continue this journey and to take action. You want to be the change that you want to see. So take action and just continue.
So that relates to being a leader versus a non-leader. Jillian touched upon it. When we return home, it's what we can or can't do. So being a non-leader, not putting it all into perspective for them, but in general, they go on the trip, they have the experience, they put it on the resume, and then they come back and sit on the couch and still eat all day and watch television all day and let the tap run all day or whatever. Whereas a leader would go on the trip, they'd have the experience, they'd learn from the experience, and they'd return and act upon it. As Jillian was saying, they'd be more aware of running water in the shower or turning the tap off while you're still brushing your teeth and then turning it back on to rinse your toothbrush, that sort of thing.
Sorry, I'm joking.
So it's about, for a leader, it's about using your knowledge of the learned opportunity that we can exploit into a sustainable project. So that's what a lot of us are trying to do with taking leadership of from having this international experience, which a lot of people at Quinnipiac have, but not a lot of people at Quinnipiac take post-trip action, and that's what we feel can be changed with a lot of the systems here at school. And we feel it's just as important to do something after the trip as well as do something on the trip. And yeah.
So just to kind of sum up and basically go off our concluding thoughts is one of the most powerful ways of like why we think this is so important for Quinnipiac is like the way that we can use our education to educate others. So while we were there, like we used education like life forms of education. So like respect, to dream, to the importance of education. And we taught them those skills, and then we come back and we think of like, so I'm an entrepreneurship major, and like I'm thinking of ways that like I would like to help their businesses grow, like the quilting business, like how can we make that better? Or like for Skylar and Jillian, like OT and PT, like they can totally see like going down there and doing trips like that and like helping teach those skills. So and that's a reinforcing element of education, because like you can learn it in the classroom and then you can go over there and actually apply it. And that's just, I think it's so powerful, and it's something that like we as students should be looking for in our education. And like we've all said, like we learn just as much from them as they learn from us. Like you don't see it at the time, but you remove yourself from camp for a week and you know how much you've learned from them. And like this is like a bullet point where like you can't like write down what you want to say like for this bullet point, because like it's all personal. Like you know what you've learned from them, like the perspectives, the values, the views, the different ways of life is just such a great form of learning that you don't get unless you step outside your comfort zone and you dive into a new culture, whether, like we said, local, national, or global. And then as the one like concluding thought is like we all have this notion of what can I do? You know what I mean? Like it's just me, you know what I mean? Like what the hell am I gonna do? Like what kind of effect can I have? Like personally, what kind of effect am I gonna have now that I'm back in Hamden in South Africa? Or if you even anything, like no matter what your circumstances is, like what can I do? But like but it's just a wrong way of looking at it. You know, it's just the little things, it's the little meetings, it's the little actions that you take, and then you start connecting with someone over here, or then this opportunity presents itself over here, and you just start piecing together the puzzle, and that's how you change. Like it's hard because like I came back and like I wanted to do all these extravagant things, right? You know, I want to do this, that. I'm talking to Peter, and he's like, dude, relax. Like just digest it a little bit, you know what I mean? And like it's just like I don't know. I've been reading a lot, so I just want to throw this one quote at you. Not that I'm a nerd or anything, but like Desmond Tutu, which is the Archbishop in South Africa, said like there's the only how to approach this. He's like there's only one way to eat an elephant, and that's one piece at a time. So it's kind of corny, but like that's the only way that you can actually go about initiating the change that you want to see is by little actions at a time. And you have to be conscious that you can be so passionate about an issue at hand, but you have to realize that the change has to come from within. which is why Tippy Toes and Tamron is such a great organization, is because she's working to empower the people that she's working with. She's not working to go into the school and tell them they need to do X, Y, and Z, or go into the townships and be like, learn how to quilt, like, then you can make money. It's like, here's the tools, like, figure it out, you know what I mean? Like, and empowering them to be the change that they want to see. So that's really important to keep in the back of your mind. And then, yeah, we just encourage all you guys to find your little moment, your molehill, and make your own mountain, as we're making ours. So.
Do you guys have any questions? I'll stay and check. And every time we're referencing Peter, he's sitting in the back. So we just wanted to say thanks because he's literally the only reason that we're standing up here. So.